Hello and welcome to Whatever Happened to the Gentleman podcast. I am your host, Sam Morris, and today I have Kelly Meyer from Project Find Your Fire on the podcast with me. This was one of the most interesting conversations that I have had to date on the podcast. Kelly is part of a husband and wife coaching team, and they are super future focused, and our conversation centered around how you start changing your behaviors. And obviously, as you all know, I love changing human behaviors. So this is a great conversation. It was super free flowing, non-scripted, and I had the best time. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So, hi Kelly.
Well, hello, Sam. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic.
What does the PFYF stand for? Oh, protect. Oh, Project Find Your Fire. I need one
Project Find
then.
Your Fire. Yes. So it's a little swag to promote and
Yeah.
to
Oh,
the
I need a hat that just says SM on it. I'm
yes, yes,
Morris.
you
There we
do.
go. In my brand colours. So, do you want to tell all my listeners a little bit about you?
I sure will. So my wife and I, my name is Kelly Meyer, as you mentioned. My wife and I run Project Find Your Fire, which is a business based on personal growth, wellness, and relationships. The three pillars are our core attributes. And we are both transformational coaches, board certified coaches, multiple graduate degrees. We take the coaching as a profession, and that's the way we approach everything that we do. But I do one on one coaching, I do group coaching, workshops, public speaking. And we're fortunate enough to travel all over the place doing what we love to do. And we've been doing it for over 30 years now.
Wow. So, because I read you are a retired professor.
I am.
So, is that related to, like, how does that kind of link together?
So when I first began teaching, my undergrad work was in education. Music was my discipline, but I was fascinated with human behavior. So I took an overabundance of psychology courses just to fully understand human behavior because it fascinated me. So I got my bachelor's degree in education and I started teaching. And it was very shortly after I started that one or two students started hanging out in my office more than they started hanging out at their own homes. Their home life wasn't something that they loved to be around, and they felt safe with me. And the conversations began. Those conversations turned into having conversations with their parents. Their parents would call me and say, "Hey, I heard you're talking to so and so after school." And I thought I was in trouble. And I said, "Yeah, I am." And they said, "Would you talk to me too?" So I started talking with parents, which led to talking with friends of parents, which led to giving workshops and starting to do small keynote things here and there. And that progressed as I was teaching. So I was teaching full time, and then my coaching really started to get legs and started to move with me. So when I worked on my master's degree in education, I took a full load of psychology courses to support my education degree. And so I went off and started teaching college. When I was doing my doctoral work at Boston University for education, I also loaded up on psychology courses. I was allowed to do that because they were electives that could be into. I was working both sides of the spectrum because it fascinated me so much. But all this time, the business started to grow and grow and grow and grow. And it literally was full time on both sides. And there came a point, the university system here was going through a reorganization. And we really weren't sure what was going on. Even tenured professors were being let go. And so I had a conversation with my wife, and she said, well, maybe it's time. And so I took that leap of faith. I left academia and jumped into what was Project Find Your Fire completely full time. I haven't looked back. I haven't missed it. I miss the students. I miss that interaction in the classroom. I don't miss grading master's theses at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't miss the committee work because I'm still teaching people. I'm still working with people. And this is what I love. This is what drives me. That's what I'm passionate about. And so I don't feel like I've left teaching. I just feel like that has taken sort of a different form.
Yeah, I love that. It's my story is actually quite similar. So someone like, oh, that's not education, but I was in the UK, our probation officers are people that work with people that have criminal convictions that get out of prison. So I trained in human behavior and why people do the things that they do and how to make them stop doing it, basically. And that is what I did for a long time. And then it got to the point where I had a business and I was doing that. And it's pretty much the same. My husband was like, it's time. And so here I am. And again, I miss watching the changes of people that the majority of people that have had criminal convictions have had really bad lives from day one. And watching those people change and become somebody else is just beautiful. I miss that part. I don't miss writing 30-page assessments, risk assessments, and making sure that that's done kind of within 14 days of them being released from prison. I don't miss that bit.
Right. Yes, but it's at the same time, like me, you're still doing what you love to do. Like you
Yeah,
are still dealing with human behavior,
yeah,
more specifically relationships. I've listened to some of your stuff,
yeah,
and I love the things that you have to say. And so you're still working with people on their behaviors and how can we alter those and how can we change our patterns and how can we the tone of our voice. I happened to listen to that one last night,
yeah. It's
tone of
inspired
speak.
by my son. As most of my content is inspired by my children as I try and teach them to be good humans. That's yeah.
Yes, and we have 4 kids. I totally get that. We have 4 kids. Our oldest is 27 and then
Wow.
24, 21, and 18. And as they were growing up, they were immersed into what we did because we both work at home. We both, are authors and speakers, and we're traveling all over and we're doing these and working with people and all of this stuff. So this has just always been part of their life growing up. And so as kids, they come home with problems that they're experiencing with school or problems with friends or boyfriends, girlfriends, or whatever the case may be. And we sit them down and they're like, Dad, I don't need your coaching right now. And so I have to remember that sometimes it's okay to be a parent and let them experience what they're experiencing, which is really part of coaching as well.
Yeah. Huh. Oh, that's true. Uh, I often think the same way. Actually, I just need to take a step back and let them find their own conclusion.
Yes.
So you run this with your wife,
Yes.
which is really cool. I like husband and wife teams. So, advice. I read your article about the blog post, it wasn't an article, about being a CEO of yourself.
Yes.
And I loved it. Tell me a bit more about how you can take control of your life.
Well, it's about the energy that you put into it, really. When we started doing this, now she has the same sort of experience getting into this, but she comes from a corporate background. So while I'm doing workshops and more of the coaching, she is doing some consultations, training the trainer kind of things. And she loves the product end of it. But when it comes to our business, your listeners who are entrepreneurs understand this in that when you start a business, you love it and you nurture it and you pour your heart and your soul into it, and you spend 18 hours a day on your business, growing your business. You're giving your kids scraps for supper, and you're ignoring your spouse because you have to send this email, you have to make this contact, you have to build this, you have to finish this product because that's what's driving you. That's what you're passionate about. And so, through that work, through that effort, you can grow your business. But that's our baby, right? We don't want anything to happen to our baby. We wouldn't sacrifice our business. Like we would never give that up. But what if we approached our own life, our personal life, the way we approached being a CEO of our business? What if we gave ourselves the love and the care and the nurturing so that we can grow? Are we willing to sacrifice ourselves for the sake of something else? It's about the energy that we're giving something. And so many times, I know entrepreneurs who are feeding their business and feeding their business and feeding their business, and yet they go home and they eat like crap and they don't sleep very well. And then they go have a drink because they're stressed out all the time, but they're not taking care of here. But if you take care of here first, yourself first, the rest will take care of itself, but you have to feed yourself before you can feed. You can't pour from an empty cup, as the old adage goes. So, what if we could be the CEO of ourselves? How powerful would that be?
I love that. 'Cause- So I tell all of the people that I work with, the first step is starting to love yourself, because I don't believe that you can be in a healthy relationship if you don't know how to set your own standards and you don't know what you want, and you have to have some love for yourself to be able to do that. So your idea about taking care of yourself first, as though you would your business, is brilliant. So many people forget, don't they? They forget, like, you need to look after yourself. It's not always about other people.
Oh, for sure. And that actually can go to a deeper level. And this is sometimes where I work with my clients on this, and I do workshops on this. I call it the relationship workshop. But when I'm doing a workshop and relationships is part of it, it seems to be that's the moment when all the men have to go use the restroom, all the men have to disappear, right? Because they're scared of that relationship talk. But I approach my relationship talk differently. And so when I'm working with people, I talk to it like this. And I'm going to try to give you the abridged version of it because it is much longer. But have you ever played the airport game? Now, the airport game is something we love to play, is when you're sitting in the airport and you're people watching. And when you watch somebody walk by, you think, oh, I bet his name is Brian, and he looks like he might be a salesman for, oh, look at his shoes. I bet he's a salesman for a shoe company. And so we play this game like we guess because of their personality, the way they look. So, with that in mind, consider this, that we all have different selves inside of us. We are not one individual self. You are not completely Sam. I mean, you are, but let me explain. I am not completely Kelly because the person that shows up when you're with your spouse is a very different person that shows up when you're with your clients, which is a very different person that shows up when you are with strangers at the grocery store, which is a very different person that shows up when you are with your extended family. These are all different people all living inside of us. And each of these people, personalities, have their own individual, distinct personalities and needs. Because when you're with your spouse, you act a certain way, you talk a certain way, you have a certain number of needs that need to be met. When you are with strangers, you talk a different way, you act a different way, and you have a different set of needs. You're a completely different person in that point. So, what I have people do in this relationship workshop is to recognize who all of these different people are in their lives. So, for me, it's the person who I am with my spouse. I am Ramon. That's that person. The person I am when I'm with strangers in the grocery store. I might be, I don't remember the name I gave him, but it might be like a Brian, somebody who is open and easy to talk to and kind and compassionate. And the person I am with my kids, that might be more of a Sebastian that is a little bit more demanding. I have standards that you must meet, that kind of a person. And it's important that once you recognize these different personalities in your life, you must give them a name. And the reason for that is that when you give them a name and can define their personality, you create an actual individual. Now, why is this important? Is that when I am with my spouse, but something happens, we have sometimes, because we work together, we're in the same business, her office is just down the hall from mine. Sometimes we have spirited conversations. We've been married 32 years. So if Sebastian shows up when I'm having a conversation with my spouse, I need to go tell Sebastian to go sit down because that's not the person that I need right now. I need to respond a different way. I need to respond as Raul, somebody who is loving and caring and compassionate, right? The next thing you need to understand is we all have a core self. Now, this is the Sam, this is the Kelly. What are our core attributes? What is that personality? Because from our core is where everything else will radiate. So in everybody's core, I believe that there are 5 attributes, and I let them name their own. But at the end of the day, I say there are 5 attributes every human being possesses: kindness, compassion, generosity, faithfulness, and I knew I was going to forget one. There are 5. Anyway, of those 5 attributes that every human possesses, sometimes we lose sight of those because of all the stuff that we bring in into our lives from our external stimulation. And because of that, sometimes we lose sight of who we are at our core because all of these other personalities are sort of flooding over and trying to do stuff that isn't really their job. And if you can get these people to stay in their lane and do what they are destined to do, then your core self can remain your core self. Understanding that you, as your core self, still have your own sets of human needs, as do each of your personalities. But where this helps us is that when we are working with relationships in our life, we always feel like it's me. Oh, I did that. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it was me doing that. Oh, I didn't do this. Or I'm such an idiot. Or all these different things that we throw on ourselves. But it's not us at our core. We have to understand that, oh, the wrong person showed up. That person should have been sitting down. No, that should not have been my response. I get that. So once you can understand that, then you can start to control where these people come in your life and your relationships and how they interact with all these different people. And then you can start calling up the people that should be interacting with people. I hope that all made sense.
That does
Sometimes I
make sense. But I do have a follow-up question. So, if you had someone that has had a lot of like really bad relationship experiences and then they're trying to start dating again, but all of those things that have just happened to them, they're struggling to move past that. How would you get them to identify which personality they need to be so that they can actually go on dates without kind of thinking, oh, this has happened to me before?
Right. And so sometimes I have a great answer for that, but we have to also remember that sometimes that personality is the one that's getting hurt, not us at our core. I mean, we feel at our core. We experience that at our core. We call that our trauma or our anxiety or whatever we want to call it now. But we have to remember that that didn't happen to us personally. That happened here. And I have to be able to work with it here because this I know is going to be okay. But the next question to ask is, do we consider it a traumatic experience or do we consider it living with trauma? Because a traumatic experience happens to all of us. We all have bad relationship experiences. We all have things that happen in our life that are traumatic. Now, we tie an emotion to that experience in our past. And we have to remember that that moment in our past is simply a spot on our timeline. However, that works within your personality. So we can navigate that fairly easily. The more complex real issue is that emotion that we have tied to that moment in time in our past. We as humans need to give meaning to things in our past. It helps us make sense of the things that are happening in our life. So we'll give it a meaning, we'll categorize it, put it neatly on a shelf. Well, anytime we experience something through our senses that reminds us of that emotion or that event, we will immediately pull that out and experience that same emotion again. So anytime you give meaning to something in your past, it will become part of your future at some point. Now, why is this important? Because we will always give meaning to something in our past. The question, though, is what meaning do you want to give it? So if we had a horribly terrible relationship experience, completely heartbroken, I'm hurt, I'm heartbroken, I can't go on, I can't date again. Or I'm stronger than that. I have more resources than I thought that I did. I'm not going to go on a dating app because I listened to that episode of your podcast. Instead, I'm going to go talk to people and become a better person because of that. Now, which of those two meanings do you want to give to that event? Because whatever meaning you give it is going to show up in your future. And that's the difference between those traumatic experiences and living with trauma. So we don't have to live with trauma, although we've all experienced a traumatic experience. Now I'm going to take this to one more level because when I'm working with people with depression, anxiety, fears, phobias, anger, things like that, sometimes there's a phenomenon, and I call this phenomenon toxic relationship syndrome, in that people experience that emotion so much every day of their life that they literally become married to that emotion. And I have had people work harder to stay depressed than they did to do the work to get out of their depression. Why? Because living without depression is scary for them. The same is true in a real relationship, right? We experience somebody who is abusive verbally, emotionally, even physically, so much in our life that that becomes the norm. Our we don't go to what's comfortable, we go to what's familiar. Our nervous system does. And so being married to that, literally or figuratively, people will tend to go back to that. So that's why people will leave one relationship that is abusive to get into another relationship that's abusive, or they will leave an abusive relationship and keep going back to that same person. Why? Because quote unquote, I love them, right? No, I love how I feel, the comfort, the familiarity that I feel when I'm being abused. That's what they have become in love with. And so the trick to this is to reframe part of their current belief system so that making what is uncomfortable comfortable to, and this is about personal growth in any area of your life. People don't want to do the work because it's hard and it's uncomfortable and it's scary, and the unknown is a scary place to go, right?
Yeah. And so it's funny because I call that our inner guard dog. And basically, you think about a guard dog, a Doberman or a Rottweiler or whatever kind of dog you have. If you had a physical guard dog in your house and you brought, because they're trained, if someone breaks into your house, they're going to bite their arm off or whatever. You brought a new person round who maybe a new friend, a new partner, someone that's coming to do work on your house. That dog doesn't know that that person is safe because it's not familiar. But if you bring your ex-partner around, who, even if they did horrible things to you, that dog would sit down and be stroked, and because it's familiar. And that is how your brain kind of works. You go after those things that are familiar, even though logic, if you use logic, it would be, why would I do this?
Yes, that's a great analogy. And actually, I like that one.
Yeah. So because that it was me, that was my life, that I pretty much, every relationship that I had was uh, a version of my biological father, and it was just pattern after pattern, and until I actually worked on that,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to find real love with people that were safe and people that were loyal.
Yeah. And that's a really important point. Yeah. Because if you don't do that work, then you will continue to search out the same emotional draw that you experienced before, as hurtful as that might be. That's where we want to end up.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. This is such a cool conversation. Um, I saw that you have traveled around a bit and you've learned about human behavior from other cultures. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. So the travels that we have done internet, I would love to travel more internationally and learn from more culture. But yeah, it in the travels that we have done so far, and even in the States, learning from other cultures and immersing ourselves, because we are kind of the people who, if we're going to do something, we go all in with it. We don't like to stick our big toe into the water. We just like to dive in. It's interesting because the human behavior aspect is universal. The relationship aspect, though, it changes a little bit. And now, from the top of my head, I'm trying to think of examples, and of course, nothing is coming to me. But
Because I put you on the spot. Sorry.
no, it's okay. For us in the US, a lot of it is the closeness of our relationships. But in other cultures, it's about the external, which is actually just as strong. A story comes to me because I heard it from a Lakota holy man, and we were waiting for a fire to get hot enough, and we were going to do an inipi, a sweat lodge. And he was a known storyteller. And so we always loved to hear his stories. And this is years and years and years ago. But one day he sat down with us, and us young bucks gathered around because we knew there was a story coming. And he said, "You know the difference between an Indian and a white man?" And we laughed a little bit. And he said, "No, no, no. Tell us the difference. Tell us the difference. What's the difference between an Indian and a white man?" And we thought it was a joke. We thought there was a punchline coming. And he said this. He said, "A white man build fire big. You have to stand back. And an Indian build your fire small. You have to sit close." And we all looked around like, what? Is that it? That's not a joke. That's not a story. But it took me about a week of thinking about that, culturally speaking. And the Indian culture is a lot like a lot of the indigenous cultures around the world, is that we in the States, I'm not sure about the UK, but around here, we build our fires big. We have to build big houses and big fences. We have to have the best cars and the best boats. And if our neighbor gets a better car, then we have to get a better car. And all we're doing through that process in building our fire big is forcing everybody further away from us. But in an indigenous culture, they build their fires small so that everybody has to come in closer. And everybody is welcome in your home, a stranger. It's just, it's an unbelievable sort of an experience if you've never experienced that before, that a stranger showing up at your door with a bag full of groceries for no reason, giving toys to children just out of the blue for no reason, all of these things. And it's all about creating all of these relationships around you so that the whole can be stronger instead of keeping what is closest to you strong and pushing everything else away from yourself.
I love that. Yeah. And I do think that though, the UK is the same. Everyone is, oh, they got a new car. I must get a new car now. And it's like a kind of constant, we're all living in fear of missing out. And everyone is all jealous of each other. And it's interesting because my daughter has a friend that has a ridiculously large house. I think it's about 3 times the size of my house. And I said to my daughter, oh, would you like to live in a house like that? And she was like, no, because it would take me forever to find you. And I was like, oh, at least you want to spend time with me. But it is like that where we focus on so many things that are not that important.
Yeah, really, there are two traps that people fall into. The one is they believe that other people, places, things are going to make them happy. So if I could finally be with this person, or if I could finally have that house or that car, or that boat, then I can finally be happy. The other trap is they believe that resources will make them happy. If I could only have more money, more time, more support, then I could finally be happy. The problem with that is that most humans fall into both traps. If I only had more support, then I could get that promotion I've been going for. And if I got the promotion, then I could make more money. And if I make more money, then I can finally get that boat, and then I can finally be happy. The problem is that not only is that false, but it's dangerous because we begin to tie our identities to those things, those people, those places. And at some point in our life, we're going to lose those. And when we lose those, we lose who we are. And if we lose who we are, then we lose who everybody is around us.
So, what would your advice be to someone that is already in that kind of trap of, if I find this, it's going to make me happy?
Find self, find purpose. When you can find that, nothing else can bother you. You see, when we talk about those identities that we tie to those things, we say, like, I'll ask people, who are you? And you say, well, I'm a coach, a car salesman, I'm a successful business person, I'm a millionaire, I'm a mom, all of these things. But all of those things, even the mom part, can be taken away from us at any time. The mom one is tricky because we raise our children throughout their early life and we nurture them and we care for them. But there is a point where they leave the nest, and that's where ours are at. And when that happens, I'm still a mom, but I'm a completely different mom than, or dad in my case, than I was before. My role has just shifted. I have just lost the dad that I was. I can't go outside to the garage and fix bicycles for the kids anymore.
Yeah,
I can't go build ramps. I can't go take them fishing. I can't, all of those things. I'm going to lose the car. I'm going to lose the job. It's all going to change. There will be a day that I'm not a coach. There will be a day that I'm not working with people and traveling all over the country. I know that, but I can't tie my identity to that. Instead, what I tell people to do is create an identity that made you that person. So if you're a successful business person, you can say you're a successful business person, but you're going to lose that one. Instead, say, I am I'm hardworking. I am determined. I am faithful. I am all of these things that made you the successful business person, the mom or the caregiver. You can say you're a mom, but at some point that role is going to change. In other words, say, I am loving, kind, compassionate, generous. That's what made you a great mom, not the fact that you just shot babies out. Of course, that made you a mom, but that doesn't make you a great mom,
yeah,
right? So it's all of those attributes. For me, I always say that somebody could beat me and leave me laying dead in a ditch and believing that they took everything from me. But guess what? I'm still going to be loving, creative, kind, and compassionate. You won't ever take that away from me. That's what I tie my identity to. And if you can do that to self, everything else will blossom around you.
that's so cool. I'm inspired. I want to work with you now because I'm like, what else could I do? So you have a story to tell me.
I do. So I was talking before about the difference between a white man and an Indian, and another story actually came to mind that is something that I always remind myself of. See, what you don't see in my office is that in front of me, behind the camera, is a giant whiteboard that covers my entire wall. And behind me, behind that sign, is another whiteboard that I use with my clients. But on the giant whiteboard behind the camera, I put little notes to myself, little reminders, just because we need the work as much as anybody. And what is written on my whiteboard is, what is your slow elk? Here's what this means. In the Indian reservations, I grew up on the border of Nebraska and South Dakota here, and the Indian reservations, extreme poverty. But there is something I had heard that is called slow elk hunting. Now, a slow elk is essentially a cow. So the young men in the middle of the night would go out and shoot a couple of cows and then bring them home, butcher them throughout the night. And then by the next morning, they would deliver packages of meat to everybody in the town. Everybody got something from the slow elk. And I thought about that a little bit. And I thought, these young men aren't doing something that is necessarily legal per se. So they're risking their own livelihood and freedom for this. They may even be risking their own lives, depending on what rancher they're getting the slow elk from. But they're doing it so that the entire town can benefit, so that they can all put food on their table. So the question I have for myself is, what is my slow elk? What am I risking so that others can benefit? What am I really laying on the table so that everybody else can eat? What is my slow elk? And
Love
that's my
that.
short story.
Love that. Good. So I know you said about the five core identities that you work from. I work from like seven principles, and one of them is about giving back and what you are doing as a purpose to give back. That it's not just all about you, because if you are not doing that to make other people's lives better as well as your own, then you can never have inner peace.
Yes. That's exactly right. And Zig Ziglar used to say that the fastest way to get something you want in life is to help as many people get what they want in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it hasn't done me wrong so far.
Right.
So yeah, but interesting. So I have a board over here and it's got different things on it. It's got my dream house. But one of the things is I've got a sign that says, I believe that the world is plotting to do me good today, and I can't wait to see what it is. And I read that, it's the first thing I see as I come into my office every single day. And that is how I start my day of whatever happens today, even if things don't go well, there is going to be eventually a good outcome.
There's a lesson.
Yeah.
There's a, yes. What meaning are you going to give that event in your life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. Oh, so I am going to wrap it up because I did promise you that it would be half an hour.
I feel like I could talk to you for another hour.
Yeah, me too. So maybe you'll have to come on again
Yeah, I'd like
at
that.
another point. So if people are looking for you, I will put these in the show notes, but where can they find you?
The easiest way to find me is at projectfindyourfire.com. From that website, you will have links to my Facebook and the business Facebook and to our other social media links. But projectfindyourfire.com is the best first search.
Yeah, that's cool because I did that. So I went from the website and I saw that you're doing TikToks now, and they're like super short, really helpful insights into kind of making changes for yourself, but short, so that you can actually do it very quickly.
I'm trying. I'm just starting on that platform, so I'm still learning.
Yeah, TikTok is a whole different world. Thank you for being on. It's been a
Thank,
pleasure.
thank you for having me, Sam. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh my God, wasn't that so good? I told you. I told you how good it was. And so after we actually got off, I said to Kelly that I am going to invite him on again because I could literally just speak to him all day. I think we work off kind of the same sort of mindset, and it just fascinates me. Humans fascinate me anyway, but that was such a cool conversation. So yeah, I will get Kelly back on. I did say to him that he should bring his wife along as well because she does the same thing as him. So I'm sure she is just as interesting, and you might end up with maybe like a 5-hour podcast episode that you have to listen to in batches. So thank you all for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. I am Sam Morris, your host, and I will see you again next week.